Now, National's tried to sweeten its asset sales pitch, as political reporter Jessica Much explains.
The Prime Minister's on a mission to sell his asset sales policy, using the National Party's annual conference to give new details on how you'll buy shares. For Mighty River Power, the minimum amount you can spend on shares is $1,000, but New Zealanders will be guaranteed up to $2,000 worth if they want it. And there will be a loyalty scheme rewarding people with bonus shares if they keep them for 3 years.
And the rationale behind that time is really just to sort of build some sort of long-term ownership out of those direct investors, so that people aren't sort of seeing it as something they go and buy today and necessarily sell tomorrow.
Mighty River Power shares are set to go on sale at the end of the year. The Prime Minister hoping that despite potential court action over Māori water rights, the sales won't be delayed.
All right, Prime Minister John Key joins me now. Good morning.
Kia ora.
Busy weekend. Let's talk asset sales.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. This loyalty program, you're talking about 3 years. How did you arrive at 3 years as a loyalty version? Australia's tried it. They tried 1 year.
Yeah.
3 years is perhaps a long time in shares, is it? But not a long time in a marriage.
True. Well, we haven't absolutely finalised it'll be 3 years, but it's likely to be 3 years. The absolute details have just been worked out, but you'll know those very soon. So the idea really is to say, look, we want people to buy the shares and hold on to them for a while, not buy them just to sell them overnight. Obviously people are free to do that, but we're giving them incentive to hold on to it, because what we're trying to do is change the psyche. So New Zealanders typically at the moment buy, if they can afford to buy assets, buy houses, they might put money in the bank, they might buy a few bonds or securities. They do buy shares, but a lot of them don't. And so we're trying to change that and make it accessible, easy, understandable, and something that they might hold for a period of time.
So you haven't talked much about this whole idea of what it does for the economy. What does it do for the economy, having more shares available, and what are kind of blue chip companies?
Well, our companies need capital, and they can raise capital two ways. Borrow the money from the bank, so that's debt, or they can go out there and raise it in the form of equity, and that equity stays in the firm permanently, and that's what a share float's all about. So for New Zealanders, potentially branching out and having some shares and some cash and some bonds or whatever is a logical thing to do.
How does that help the economy?
Well, it helps those companies get access to that equity. They then use that equity to go out there and grow. So if you take a company that comes to the market, typically it's owned by maybe a small group of people, a family or whatever it might be, and they only have a certain amount of cash, and then coming to the market allows lots of other investors to put their money in, own a share of hopefully the upside of that company, and then from there that company can use that money to grow their business. So that's the sort of life cycle, if you like.
How much of this whole idea of growing the stock market in New Zealand, because it's only 20% of 25% of our sort of GDP, Australia's got 80% of their GDP, the stock market's that size, that's quite a big gap. How much of this motivation to increase our the NZ, stock market exchange, how much is that a motivation rather than getting rid of debt?
Yeah, so it's one of the motivations. So there's quite a number, but as I've been saying for quite some time, people have been saying no to the mixed ownership model, and we've been saying, well, you've got all this money pouring into your KiwiSaver account, but where do you invest it? I mean, there's $12 billion there at the moment, and every week hundreds of millions of dollars pour into these accounts. And it's the same with mum and dad if they have some money in the bank, of which there's about $100 billion, by the way, sitting around in all of those fixed deposits and the likes. Where do they put that? So it's having opportunities. So we do want to grow the stock exchange.
So if we weren't in debt, would you want to do the asset sales anyway? Do you
yes.
believe in it that much?
Look, my view is the debt element, and it allows us to buy other assets without having to put more debt on the balance sheet, is a compelling argument in its own right, but it's only ever been one of a small number of factors. There's a lot of other factors, making the companies perform better, giving people places to invest.
So if we weren't in debt, National would want to do this?
Oh, totally, in the sense that I think the mixed ownership model's been proven to be very successful, and Air New Zealand's a great example of that. There's just a slightly greater degree of separation because they have this 40, in their case it's 27% floated, but because they have private sector shareholders, and I think that helps the situation.
Looking at it slightly cynically, the 3-year concept again, does that sort of give you time to potentially sell off all the assets and go through another election before National is judged on whether those shares are still in Kiwi hands?
Yeah, so people are always going to try and make that argument, but it's important to understand that the retail portion, so if you go and buy those shares through your bank or online, or however you do that through a broker, but you basically buy them in your own name. Very briefly, the way that will work is if you apply for $2,000 worth of shares, you're guaranteed to get all of them. The minimum amount you can buy is $1,000 worth of shares. You can apply for more, $5,000, but you're not guaranteed. For instance, they get a loyalty bonus, and it's only that portion. So if an institution,
only that 2,000 portion.
Yeah, that's right. So they're an institution. The direct investors will actually get it. But what I mean is, if you're like the Accident Compensation Corporation, for instance, and they go and buy those shares, they don't get the loyalty bonus. So the point there is, it would be possible for numbers to move around a lot. So it's not about politics. It's really about saying, for those first-time investors, let's have a concept of them holding shares for a period of time. Hopefully they'll get used to that, and then that will become a more natural thing that they do.
All right, Prime Minister Junkie, thank you.
Okay.
Prime Minister, very quickly before you disappear, we've got Tariana Turia coming in to talk about the ongoing processes of trying to make us smoke-free by 2025.
Yeah.
We had a chat earlier this morning. Would you ever, albeit 12 years down the track, would you ever legislate to the extent of trying to ban tobacco products?
Well, the problem with that, I think the answer is it's unlikely, and the reason for that is it's tremendously difficult. I mean, effectively you'd be saying that cigarettes are a banned substance in New Zealand, and then you'd have to deal with, obviously a different international environment, say for a tourist that comes from Singapore, and the impact overall on the economy.
It would just create so many issues here, so it's not something you'd ever consider.
No, I mean, I think what we are trying to do is say, look, smoking is bad for you. We prefer that you didn't smoke. We're going to give you every encouragement not to smoke. And look, I had the same discussion with my son yesterday, not that he's smoking, but he was talking about the party he'd been at and young people were smoking. And as I said to him, the same thing I'd say to anyone, look, smoking kills you with greater predictability more than almost anything else. If you smoke for 20 years or more, you are likely to die 20 years younger than you otherwise would. So that's why we want people to give up.
However, there is still that choice there.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. People have got their own choice, and some people will smoke. They know the risks, and look, it may claim their lives. But all I can say is, as Prime Minister, I go around quite a lot of hospices, and the great tragedy is the number of people in their 50s and 60s who have got great families. They'd love to be there, and if they'd known all this when they started smoking at 15, frankly, they probably wouldn't have done it.
All right, thanks, Prime Minister.